gonna get those courtesy flags?
Eventually.
Hi, birds, baby.
They're pelicans.
They're big birds. Says it can't. Did you figure it out?
So we decided to do a 103 and 104 on our own boat, and there were a number of reasons for doing this.
So some of the reasons that we chose to do the 103 and 104 classes on our own boat were that, for one, this is the boat that we're going to be living on. It's the one we're going to sail on. It's the one we're going to travel around on. So it made more sense to us to actually do those classes and use that time to get to know this boat, because we have never sailed this boat. The most we've ever done with it is take it over to the fuel dock to empty the black tanks. This meant that we were learning our boat. We were getting used to handling the boat, because every boat handles differently. But we were doing it with a trained, experienced person that could make sure that we were safe. The other reason was we wanted our kids to be present for the classes. None of our three youngest kids that are on the boat with us, they're not old enough to take the classes. The oldest one is 13, and I believe it's 16 that you have to be before you can actually get certified. But they could still learn from the experience. They could still absorb some information, practice some things that they needed to do. We've been told by a bunch of people, not a bunch, a few people, that we should take our classes by ourselves and practice the boat and learn how to use it, learn how to sail it. We were told that on our little boat and on this boat, that we should do all those things by ourselves and then bring the kids in once we know what we're doing. And if that's how people choose to do it, that's fine. That is not us. That's not how we do things. We have always had our kids in the middle of what we're doing, and so they need to learn with us, and the best way to do that is for us to all learn together. For our family, that's the best way. The other thing is that we could have taken the class on our first boat, our first sailboat, on the lake, where we took the other, the ASA 101 class. We probably would have gotten it for cheaper, and we'll talk about that later. But doing it here on this boat meant that this is the boat we're living on. It's the one we're going to sail on. We got to take this boat down the ICW several times, with lots of traffic, it's fine, just leave him, Steven. It's lots of traffic. There were cargo ships, there were military cargo ships that were escorted by Coast Guard and some other people. There was like 3 or 4 boats escorting them. There were lots of power boats going back and forth, and people on jet skis, and just a lot of traffic, which we would not have experienced on the lake where we were sailing at previously, because it's a smaller lake with less people there, and definitely not cargo ships going by. And we were able to learn how to get off of the ICW and onto the ocean, and then back onto the ICW safely, which is not exactly rocket science, but it's not easy because you have to make sure you're going where the water is deep enough, basically. We also got to see actual buoys and markers that told us where we were at, where we should be going, what direction we should be in, like in real life situations. So for us, that was fly. So for us, that was the best choice, to do it so that we could practice in a real life setting.
So we did the courses for also insurance reasons. Part of that was we got a significant discount if we had done the 103 and 104. There were some companies that just ignored it, but the insurance that we could get at the time, even though it wasn't required, it was a significant discount if we had those courses and we got signed off on them. Some companies wanted a captain to sign off on you to do it. They had to sail with you for a period of time. That's over $400 a day to hire a captain to do that. We didn't want to go that route because we found out that if you do a 103 and a 104, the captain signs off on you anyway, because they're basically signing off on you so that you can hire a charter boat, buy it from someone else and operate it by yourself. You've got to be competent, and in this case it's our own boat, so they're signing on us to say, yep, they can operate the boat.
So if I'm on the dock and I want to spring off, step back a couple. Okay, so now go ahead and put the boat in reverse. Coming out now. Still coming, right?
Menace.
Probably come out so you can almost touch that other piling. Yeah, you can give it a little more. See that? Well, now you got the boat. Like if there's a boat in front of you, you could be.
I always say with the smaller rope, you definitely should let it go.
Yeah, it makes it easier, right?
It makes it easier, but also I can feel it more on my hand.
So now if we wanted to get off the dock this way, look at where we're at. Right? And then notice, remember, you're going to pull left anyway, right? So now you can pretty much turn the wheel all the way to port and go off the dock. If you were trying to back off the other direction, you would have to leave the wheel straight.
Right, yeah.
You would turn the wheel all the way over already, right?
Yeah.
And then you would just put the pedal to it.
Yeah.
But notice how you can move it around a little bit even with the wheel. Okay.
Huh?
It's not underneath the bumper, so I can't pull it all the way up.
Oh, okay. Well, let's see if you can just slide it under. Will it fall underneath it? Or no? There you go. See that? We're getting used to that line handling. Good. Now go ahead and turn the wheel away from the There, you want to clear the pole. Watch the pole.
Yeah,
And when you clear the pole, turn hard. First. Good. Now, period. See how that first is?
Yeah.
Okay, give it that first. Don't leave it on, right? You're going to stop the boat for you, right? Now start turning away. The next one. Okay, he's getting there. Okay, so now stop the boat. See him around the marina, look at the long hook on the beach. Slow down, just wait for there. such a bad luck. I haven't seen any wildlife in here.
I know.
Smile, make believe you're having fun.
I wanted a video when that water took flashing up on it. That's where it's gonna be fun.
So what were our likes about the 103? The biggest thing I think that I got out of it was the docking. I wish we'd done something very similar in the 101.
I feel the ASA 101 class, you're still learning to sail so that you could have your own little boat, or so that you could go sail somebody else's boat. That class should include the docking. It should be the initial. I mean, to be honest, you should take a docking class before you enter a boat. It's like going to marriage counseling so that you don't try to kill each other when you're putting the boat in the slip or tying it up to a dock.
You're not having to throw lines, you're using the midship hook.
Nobody's jumping off and on the
Nobody's
boat.
jumping off on the boat.
Nobody's using their body to
Nobody's
stop the
having
boat.
to yellow.
Yellow.
Nobody's having to yell as to what to do. You're not having to rely on other people being present at the dock. You should be able to do it all yourself.
And the powerboat we had and the sailboat we had, every single time that we put that boat on a trailer or we docked either one of them, it was usually me. I jumped off the boat. Well, maybe our first boat needed some work, so you couldn't have done this boat. But I would jump off the boat onto the dock, and I physically stopped the boat. We don't do that anymore.
No.
I always had bruises on my arms, and my legs, and my body. None of that anymore.
But we also learned to handle the boat tied up to the dock. I mean, there's
How to
ways
position it to
position
pull out,
the boat.
position it to get back into place.
How to make it easier so that when the person is tying up against the cleat, you can actually position the boat so that they're not stretching.
Yes.
Things like that.
Yes. So, docking was probably the most important thing I got out of both classes.
The thing that I didn't like about 103 is it went into some navigation things, and I felt that we needed more time to practice that.
It wasn't it wasn't like navigating the boat. It was using a map, and there's like compass rows on the map, and you use all these tools and stuff. And to be honest, I'm still a little confused about the degrees thing, but we do have our book, and I did learn during these 4 days of training that if I can't get the answer out of a person, I can go back to my book.
And then there was a section on weather that I wish we did go a little bit more into detail.
Yes.
So, but apart from that, we learned about tides, getting in and out of a bay, depending on which way the tide's coming.
When we came to see this boat, the seller said, I would really like to take you out, but it's the wrong time of day. This boat can't leave the dock unless it's completely high tide, the highest point of tide. When we left to go on to do the survey on this boat, we left at the highest point of tide because that's what we were led to believe it had to be the highest point of tide. We kind of learned that wasn't true. We didn't leave at the highest point of tide on any of the 4 days that we sailed.
What we found is that based on the new equipment that we put in, the depth gauge, and what the tides were, we could actually leave a lot earlier than that, actually at the midpoint between high tide and low tide and low tide and high tide. So
That
made
was
a lot of
good. We
difference.
learned really to figure out what we can maneuver in places.
All right, here we go. There you go.
You alright, Kate? Yeah.
Still won't have a hand, so I still can't.
So I kind of felt that the 104 course was more of a review of the 101 and 103.
More of a hands-on review.
Yeah, it went into a little bit more detail, but there was stuff about provisioning. But if anybody has done camping and gone camping for a while and used an RV, I think most people would have known about that anyway. A lot of the ship systems we already knew, but it was more about the actual seamanship and sailing and what weather helm was and things like that just expanded a little bit upon what we'd already learned. What I liked, we had the last part of a hurricane come through, so the day after or so of the hurricane, the waves were still pretty
choppy.
Pretty
rough.
choppy, still coming in. We were sailing in 4 or 5 feet waves. Everybody by you was
Except for me, yes.
seasick.
Katie curled up in a ball, and so she never actually got sick, but she just sat out on the deck and curled up in a ball and refused to move. Town and Lexi puked and apologized for puking 3 or 4 times each, and Steven puked more than anybody else.
And then, but we figured that...
What did we learn about that? Don't eat a big breakfast before.
Yes, don't eat a big breakfast before.
Because I cooked a huge breakfast that morning. But anyway.
And then the other thing that I felt a lot more comfortable knowing that if we were to sail in winds and waves like that,
that I can handle the boat while he
well,
puked.
you could handle the boat, but also that as a family it wasn't
Impossible. I actually prefer to sail when the water's maybe not quite that rough, but even that rough or a little less, because I feel like when the water's a little more rough, you can actually, which I don't know if you really experienced this because you were sick, but to me, it's easier to tell where the boat's going and how you need to respond when the water's a little rougher.
And then the last day's sailing that we did was absolutely brilliant. We had 20, 25 knots of wind.
We got up to 10 knots in the boat.
We got up to 10 knots in the boat with the tide going out behind us. Otherwise we were doing 7.5 knots. We had a reef in both the main and the jib. He actually taught us what overpowering this boat was going to look like, because we'd had them out at full at one point, and you could definitely feel it in the steering wheel. And then we tied down. The instructor was absolutely brilliant. At one point we had an issue with the furling line on the jib getting caught underneath the mechanism, and he actually went out on deck and fixed it, and we were able to fill
It
up.
wasn't an easy fix. Like in the end, he had taught us earlier that morning about tying a rope that's say connected to your sail. You take another rope and you tie it in a special way, and then you can use that to like relieve some of the pressure to get the ropes entangled. But even that, we did it and it didn't work. He eventually took all the ropes off of the spool and completely redid them. They were in there wrong to begin with, and we just were unaware because we hadn't sold the boat. So that part was pretty good. We learned something that day for sure.
So the costs were a little bit higher for us for doing the course. On average, they're about $1,700. But this particular school had a policy that even if it was your own boat, the minimum that they would do it for was 3 people. So we ended up having to pay for a third person. We tried to get someone else in so that they could...
I went out on some Facebook pages and said, hey, does anybody need to take the course? We have friends that need to take the courses, but they were not available. Like, there wasn't enough notice for them to take off work and that kind of thing. And so it just didn't work out, and we paid more than we should have.
Yeah. But I also feel that because of that, we also got a bit more one-on-one
time, yes.
You weren't having to share with, I mean, like our 101 course we did.
I think it's 6 people, and yes, not enough time to like switch off and practice doing stuff.
Now, if our friends Jim and Lisa would have been here, that would have been absolutely brilliant. But
right, yeah.
That's another story.
But they just couldn't get off work all the time, so.
So that's basically it. Our 103 and 104